With some time between the trade period and draft, it's time to dive back into some opinions about the AFL. Welcome to another edition of Eyes on AFL, where we go through some of your hot takes about the current and future state of the competition. Our first take is from Tom Wood, who says footy is as good as it's ever been. People who say it was better decades ago are only blinded by nostalgia. Players are far more skillful and athletic, and the game is more exciting to watch. This one is going to stir the pot a bit. When we talk about players, coaches and teams and these type of discussions, it does seem to normally depend on the era you were in and the era you grew up watching. A quick example is the Michael Jordan and LeBron James GOAT debate. People in Jordan's era are more likely to pronounce him the GOAT, whereas this generation who grew up with LeBron are more likely to call him the best ever. This take also depends on the type of football you like. If you just want a pure goal fest, then this state of the game isn't the best it's been. If we go from 1965, the 2023 season was the 6th lowest for average goals per game at 12.1. This number is for each team. Whereas the 80s and 90s mainly take up the top 10, with 1982 standing on top at 16.2, roughly 8 total goals more per game than right now. In this time span, we saw much more isolation, one-on-one in forward 50s, and huge amounts of space all over the field, which did help those big key forwards kick massive amounts of goals. Another important mention is the increase of total marks per game since the 2000s, with every year except 2020 featuring in the top 23 for marks per game. This shows the change over time between more direct forward play to the power forwards, compared with the slower kick mark tempo that has been introduced since the 2000s. So if you enjoyed the era of high scores and 100 goal seasons, then this era probably isn't your favourite. Now to the player aspect of the take. I think if we took every player in the competition from say 1970 up to now, overall the athleticism of the players would be better. They are simply more professional, train better, eat healthier, and also develop younger. It all adds up. The skills aspect is interesting. The most frustrating part of supporting your team is set shot goal kicking. We see even the best players often miss simpler shots on goal due to inconsistent routines and not understanding where to aim the ball. Set shot goal kicking hasn't improved in the 2000s, but it's been steady since the 1980s. If we look at key forward greats like Tony Lockett, who converted at 69.7%, and Jason Dunstall, who went at 66.2%, our current generation don't match up as well. But for overall kicking, handballing and marking, it's hard to judge, especially for someone like me who wasn't around in the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. There are high and low level skilled players in every era, and watching now, that hasn't seemed to have changed. There are still plenty of poor kicks in the AFL. For the last point, it has been an exciting few seasons. There seems to be plenty of close games most weeks that are full of momentum swings. The AFL does deserve credit for the new rules, which have opened the game back up, especially at centre bounces. From 2005 to the late 2010s, the game was becoming very defensive, but the slight shift in rules has still kept those tactical elements while opening up the game, allowing for more opportunities to score. The game and its entertainment value is as high as it's ever been. Daniel Kennedy is a believer in Sam Mitchell's Hawthorn, predicting a top 6 finish next season. Hawthorn fit the mould for a team that could take a big leap next year. From round 9, they found their mojo and finished the last 14 games, 6 wins and 8 losses. It's not a positive winning record, but it doesn't paint the full picture. Out of those 6 wins came impressive performances against St Kilda, Brisbane, and the biggest, a shock upset win against Collingwood in round 21. Overall, they had huge improvements in individuals, starting with the best and fairest winner, Will Day, who despite his slender frame, successfully transitioned to the midfield, adding outside class. The midfield as a whole improved, with James Walpole getting back to his best and fairest form, and Jai Newcombe further establishing himself as a power-on baller who can wreak havoc. Connor Nash at 6'5" is another good ball winner with defensive instincts, while Finn McGuinness is currently the best tagger in the competition. The oldest of the bunch is Nash, who is just 25 years old, and together they were already a top 3 centre bounce clearance group in 2023. Throw in Josh Ward and Cam Mackenzie too, and it's a deep midfield that will look to become formidable next season. Their defence as a whole is solid too. James Sicily is all-Australian calibre, and veterans in Jarman Impey and Blake Hardwick complement impressive first-year player Josh Weddle. It would have been nice to get Ben Mackay, but James Blank will need to be able to hold down the best key forwards. Overall, it's a group that's good enough for a finals calibre team, especially if Sicily can play every game. But they will need to clean a few things up. From a personnel point of view, the forward line is a little weak. They average the equal second least goals per game, and their leading goal kicker was veteran Luke Bruce with 47 goals. He will be 33 at the start of next year, and although he will probably star again, it's time to take the pressure off him. Mitch Lewis will no doubt improve after a knee injury interrupted his start of last season, and his 37 goals can get up to the 50 plus range. No Chad Wingard and no Tyler Brockman hurts the small forward stocks, adding pressure onto gut runner Dylan Moore and the crafty Connor McDonald. Mabiel Chol essentially comes in for Gazitsky, and Jack Gunston returns, while they'll be hoping Jack Ginnivan can return to his 2022 form and kick 40 plus goals. Their draft pick, currently at the 4th spot, probably should be spent on Zane Dersma, a smooth, classy player who kicked 71 goals in total this year, or Nick Watson, who is a small forward that has special talent. Either one would help the potency of their forward line. Hawthorn can make a jump up the ladder, but the forward half doesn't have near the depth of talent like their midfield or defence. The other issue Sam Mitchell needs to address is the overall consistency of the team. It happens with youthful squads due to the length of the season, but the Hawks were up and down significantly last year. They beat Collingwood and Brisbane, but also suffered heavy losses to Gold Coast, Carlton and Essendon while losing to Fremantle twice. Another pre-season and general experience should naturally curtail this. Hawthorn are a big shot at finals and a sneaky chance for top 4. It might seem early to call, but their midfield is stacked with talent and high picks. The defence is solid, and they clearly have bought into Sam Mitchell's plan with impressive wins already stacked up. They may have to overcome a weaker forward line, but if Mitch Lewis can be a top 5 key forward and get a little help from the smalls with some goals at the midfield, they can be a top 8 worthy team. AFL What If simply says Twilight Grand Final equals GO, implying our Grand Finals need to be shifted forward a few hours. The 2020 Grand Final, which started at 6:30pm Eastern Time, and the 2021 Grand Final, which started at 5:15 in Perth, have been the 2 Grand Finals to be played at twilight and later. They were 2 of the highest rated games in history, with 4.16 million watching in 2021, while 3.81 million tuned in to 2020. Both beat this year's TV ratings and eclipsed the majority of those before it. So maybe for the AFL there is a viewership case to broadcast the game later. However, it's important to note that 2020 and 2021 were in the middle of COVID, meaning many would have watched from home instead of bars or pubs. This may be a significant factor in the higher ratings. You can argue the pre-game and halftime shows could be a little more spectacular with better light shows and fireworks, but the last couple grand final performances were well liked in general, so this wouldn't be a major factor. It all comes down to your taste. The commercial and financial differences between the start times doesn't seem too important. If it was, the change would have been made already. If you are hoping for it, it's going to be unlikely, as it's something new CEO Andrew Dillon has opted against. So there are another few takes about the AFL. Let me know what you think about them, and if you have any of your own, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.